Welcome back to another episode of GlobeZ. I'm Eli Moyes, and this week we have another week in review covering the biggest headlines that happened this week. Trump fired the Inspector General of the State Department last Friday night, claiming it was on Mike Pompeo's recommendation. This was immediately met with a lot of skepticism, as the job of the State Department Inspector General is to, investigate the State Department, and if the leader of the State Department, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, was requesting or recommending this firing, that meant he was probably trying to hide or halt any investigations into his wrongdoing. Some allegations against Mike Pompeo include his use of employees to run personal errands, such as walking his dogs and picking up his dry cleaning, and his seeming non-action on several emergency arm deals Trump signed with Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. The weapons given out in these arm deals will likely be used in the controversial Yemeni war, in which United States bombs have been found at the ground zero of wedding, school, and hospital bombings. Pompeo still claims that he knew only of one of the investigations into him and still categorically denies that this was retaliation. Democrats are claiming that this is simply another way that Trump is trying to consolidate power in the federal government, and it's another in a long line of oversight firings. Cyclone Amphan hit the coasts of India and Bangladesh in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, diminishing any hopes for physical distancing in the areas and compromising the very strict laws Bangladesh and India had in place. 3 million were evacuated before the cyclone hit, and $13 billion in damages were reported in Bangladesh, where the cyclone hit the hardest. 102 people died, but many experts are saying this death toll could have been much higher if not for the excellent response by the governments of India and Bangladesh.
And in other news, US-China tensions have only risen. Now it's not only over the coronavirus and its origin, but also over Hong Kong and its autonomy. Just to recap, Hong Kong is a semi-autonomous region in China, meaning that it could make its own laws, it has its own courts, governing system, and own trade deals around the world. But China has recently passed a law to diminish this autonomy, where China can essentially bypass any law made by the Hong Kong government. This led the Trump administration to declare that Hong Kong is no longer a semi-autonomous region. That's after Hong Kong was returned from being a UK colony to China and was under an agreement that it was supposed to stay autonomous until 2047. As countries around the world begin to open up, we know that it inevitably has its risks. But one thing we could do to really diminish these risks is create a vaccine. I know that's much easier said than done, and I know that I have no immunology experience and would pretty dramatically fail if I tried myself, but there are companies working on creating vaccines, and Moderna recently released good results for a study on their vaccine. The stock market surged after that, which was really great, but then it went right back down again after some scientists said the results were a little bit iffy. Even some chief executives sold their stock in the company, which is really not promising. Some of the issues cited include limited sample size, like if you, for example, give 2 people your vaccine, and both of those 2 people have the antibodies, that really doesn't tell you enough about the vaccine for the results to be promising. Then there were also issues with antibody duration, like if you have your antibody test 2 weeks after getting your vaccine, that's great, it lasts 2 weeks, but does it last longer than that? Like, are you going to go get a vaccine every 2 weeks? Doesn't seem particularly sustainable, or like something that I would like to do. Then there were also issues where the report released was much more wordy and it included limited amounts of numbers. Like statements like the vaccine is great, for example, are not as helpful as like a percentage of people who got the antibodies after having the vaccine. Long story short, even though this study might not have been as helpful as we had hoped, it still is hopeful news, and we all would really like to see further trials of vaccines in the future.